And we're mixing things up. I'm still working on that transition here on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, but episode 652 today, going Greco, red alert style, with Tim Hands, owner, founder, 5-Point Move. There he is right now. He's drinking the coffee.
Hello.
He's in the dirty jers. I on the other hand, for those of you watching on video, on Facebook Live, on Twitch, on Mad Talk Online, on Rockfin, it's Oberon season here in the Midwest. So we've got the Bell's Oberon in the classic Mad Talk Online 20-ounce pint glass, because if it's 20 ounces,
I got two
it's
of
not
them.
a pint. You got the big one, or you got like the OG versions?
Whatever. I love them both. So whichever size you say.
Actually, no, I did send you the new bigger ones because you had an unfortunate incident of one crashing off the table.
Yes,
right?
it fell right off the counter. Absolutely.
Oh,
yes,
the
that's exactly what
horror!
happened.
The horror of
It
losing
was devastating.
such a wonderful piece of equipment. I mean, it truly was. One thing is, as being a craft beer guy, we're gonna get off the rails real quick here on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. In case you don't know, I'm Jason Bryant. In case you don't know, that's Tim Hands. He does all things Greco at fivepointmove.com, spelled out at 5 with the number PT Move on Twitter, and a lot of things we're going to be talking about with the trials coming up. We talked with Gabby Lord Klein about women's freestyle. Actually recorded that earlier today. That's out now on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Tim, we're going to wait a little bit on the release to give Gabby a couple days to resonate with the women's stuff. But as we're talking about these glorious tall boys, when you get a 16.9 can and you get a regular mix, pint glass, a Libby pint glass, it's like you got like almost an ounce left over that's in the bottom of the can. You got to shake it. Well, with these glasses, you get none of that, and you got room for all the glorious, 2-3 fingers ahead. You're good to go. So
yeah, right.
that is there by design. These ones.
I know. I didn't know the physics of it.
They didn't say Mad Talk Online on the back.
Awesome. They're the best glasses. I'm dead serious when I say that.
Yeah, let's see. There's a reason for that. As you grow up and you go from drinking for volume, or actually for dollar. You spend 7 years in college. It's like how much Natty Light can I get for $20? So what was the beverage of choice in the Jersey years for you?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it?
Besides fresh, wholesome milk, because we're going right into the weeds right now. Plus, I'm really pleased that there wasn't a picture of Max Nowry as we started this thing.
Oh man, what did I get into? Did you wait? In Virginia, was Honey Brown popular?
Oh, J.W. Dundee's Honey Brown was quite good. Yeah, I actually saw a tin tacker for that at a cigar place in Fort Worth this week. And I'm like, whoa, I used to drink that. And I was going to say high school, but I was actually somewhat old fashioned. I waited until after I was out of high school to consume illegally. But yeah, by the way, Mom, Dad, Abby, my wife, kids, don't listen to this episode ever. Anyway, so
Jason, I mean, first off, you go somewhere where it's cheap drafts. So like if places like Thursday night, 50-cent Miller drafts, right, whatever it is. So you were only drinking enough beers to give you a base. Then whatever. Then it got different.
Yeah, we had Thirsty Thursdays where we had two freshman wrestlers working the door, and $2 to get in when normally there was no cover ever. That was because it was the only place left. And then like, hey, $7 pitchers of Natty, which at the time was like criminal because the place across the street was doing them for $3. Neither of those places are still in business. But that being said, Tim, let's just a little bit before we get started and talk about the Greco trials. Tell us a little bit about FivePointMove.com, the origin story of the site for those who are unfamiliar, and the average word count of a feature story on 5-Point-Move, because it's probably the most bang for the buck of any wrestling journalist out there.
What's funny is that I was saying to Bisick back at the hotel over the week, and I was saying, I think the bar has been set a little high, at least in terms of length, because like you can't even get away with like a piecemeal 500-word recap. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the match descriptions are just, yeah. I don't know. I would love, there's too many articles. I would love to hire someone to audit all of the 5-point content, 5-point articles anyway, and to come up with that average. Because I'd have to figure like low range would probably be like, let's say in the neighborhood of 800-900. So
I mean, that's a good solid. I mean, you're looking at like, coming from the newspaper industry where they give you like typically an inch count. Give me 10 to 12, which is, you're looking at, let's do some quick math here. So if you got 33 words is an inch, let's get to, so you're looking at, maybe you're looking at like 400 or 500 words for some of these high school raps that I used to have to do. I'd have to do a high school football game, maybe get 12 to 15. I'd cover Peninsula District Wrestling Tournament, which was one of the worst districts in the state. At the time I was down there. I mean, one year we qualified 2 guys for the entire state tournament. And then my AA district was doing much better, but it was like, okay, I'm covering the Peninsula District. The next day for Intermat, I'd be writing a preview for Oklahoma State. One of these two things is not like the other. So, so when it comes to the I don't know, I don't want to call it predictive text, but if from predicting text, if you're typing this on your phone, it's like, boom. So Tim is very, very, very detailed in his Greco breakdown. So that's one thing that you'll get on FivePointMove.com. You'll also get all sorts of coaches reports. So break down which coaches reports we've got on 5-Point-Move each month.
Oh, I wish I could even say it were monthly. I've actually had to space them out just because, if there were something viable each month, that'd be fantastic. But sometimes even when things were normal, I don't think, Lindland, it's so dumb. But so the Lindland report is called officially the Coach Lindland's weekly report. Of course, it's not actually weekly. It's like, at best, it's bi-weekly. And even then it has been spread out a bit. He's the only one who was, constant, because there's a need for that. But Northern Michigan, that's Basic now. Dan Chandler, Minnesota Storm. Jason Lukitas, Marines. Spencer Mango, Army. Now, Sean Lewis is the head coach of Army. But the reason why I do Spencer instead of Sean, aside from the fact that Spencer's one of my closest friends in the sport, it's more because Sean I don't think he likes to be verbose, and not that Spencer does, but I think he just likes delegating that out to Spencer, and Spencer's happy to do it. But if things were normal, I would say, yeah, it would be monthly, maybe every 6 weeks. I try to rotate everybody to where it's not saturation unless we're either going into or coming right out of a tournament. So if we're coming right out of a tournament, then it's cool because then you get everybody's kind of, their perspective or their post-mortem, whatever it might be. But I don't know, Jason. I wish there were clockwork. It's just the way that the senior schedule ticks. You might have the Marines going to 2 tournaments in January, but you might not have anybody else doing anything until March. So it's just kind of weird the way that kind of works.
Yeah, the international calendar is quite interesting, and of course we've got we've also got news of a U.S. Open that's coming in Coralville in a couple weeks. That's been trickling out on the internet now. When we talk about what we're going to bring up the brackets now, just because that's what we do. I'm prepped. I'm ready. I know Gabby Lord Klein with the women's conversation earlier today. She was prepped and ready. She's in Florida and had these bad boys printed out. By the way, I think one reason you also don't have Sean Lewis do it is he'd probably throw a challenge brick in the middle of doing something because I remember one year. So real quick Sean Lewis story. That's kind of a joke because when I was working at USA Wrestling, the only team I think that threw more challenges during that 3-period ball draw era of the binary code of wrestling, the 011001 bull crap, was Italy. They came, and it was actually the year Kendrick Sanders basically bombed the Italian.
2012.
Yeah, he bombed the Italian. They were, I think we're at 6,000 feet in Colorado, and the Italians at 5,000 feet. It was, the power bomb of all power bombs, ones that would make, the WWE guys go, damn. But so
that was insane, yeah.
Women and Greco had a open qualifier in Arlington, Texas, at the end of December of 2011, and the Texas referees, in their infinite, they had the wheel of clinch, which was interesting. They had a red-blue they didn't use it, but the challenge bricks were pillow pets of the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers. The Cowboys were blue, the Rangers were red. and there was a challenge, and Sean grabbed this pillow pet, and he sat there and he looked at the pillow pet, he looked at the challenge, he looked at the pillow pet, and he decided it was the lowest amount of challenges in Army WCAP history because Sean and Bruce did not want to throw these things. It was quite comical. So that's my Sean Lewis little playful poke. Please don't send Chocolate Chrome's Ramil Byers after me. But we'll start off at 60 kilo. Actually, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Tim, what were your overall thoughts about Fort Worth, the Olympic trials, and what you had to do, or what you came to do as far as content for 5-Point-Move there in Fort Worth, where we were supposed to be in State College? Would have been a much shorter trip for you. But overall thoughts and reflections about Fort Worth as a host.
Well, you know what? I kind of want to ask you that. You've been to how many Olympic trials now?
This is my 5th American, 2nd Canadian, so 7 overall.
Yeah, well, I want to get your perspective, actually. Let's turn the tables.
All right. I'm good with that.
What did you think? Yeah, especially considering the circumstances, the venue. You are, if not more so, an expert on Greco-Roman at the Olympic trials than even I, for sure. I want to know what you thought. I'm very curious because everybody is asking me these things as if I'd love to hear what you have to say, honestly.
Well, I talked, in my earlier show, talking about women's freestyle. My first trials was 2004. So what is my Greco bar? What's my Greco bar? Okay. I've got Hall and Paulson in unlimited overtime back in the rule set that was still cumulative scoring. There was no step outs back then. So we're looking at, let's look at some comparisons. I did a brief podcast about some of my memories a couple weeks ago prior to this. But Indianapolis, It was in the RCA Dome, and it was kind of quartered. So we were in an end zone in that bowl, and the mats were elevated. My buddy Carlos Eason was wrestling in it on the freestyle side. It was the very first one for women because that was the first Olympic trials that women's wrestling was going to be at the Olympics. So, having gone there, having gone to Iowa City twice, Vegas. We had our NWCA convention alongside the Olympic trials when I worked for the NWCA in 2008. And then, Iowa City was just phenomenal twice. Got to see, the most exciting or the most sought after consolation freestyle bout in the history of wrestling with Taylor and Dake back then. And then to be on the microphone in iconic Carver Hawkeye in 16. But this one, I tell you what, Dickey's Arena, it's only about 2 years old. That is a just gigantic maze of awesomeness. I mean, we were bubbled, kind of bubbled. So we were tier 1. So we weren't interacting with any of the fans. And there was the second row media, and there was a couple media down on the floor. But ultimately, it was walk to the hotel and walk back. Now there are cases where I had to walk, down the block to get some dinner, but it was outside. Most of the time I was with Tony Rotundo, a photographer. But as far as you take what wrestling people like to do, we like to socialize. And if you take the pandemic out of this, Fort Worth was a fantastic host because it gave you everything you wanted. It was the biggest freaking video board in the history of the trials, at least in my experiences. So there wasn't a bad seat in the house if you were even kind of a little away from the mats. That video board was just ginormous. It was easily putting all video on the mat. You had the line of sight scoreboard underneath, which gave you a bout board. There was all sorts of technology. The PA system I loved. The staff at USA Wrestling really kind of treated me and Dort Mayab, who is quite a Greco woman herself, with Gary, her husband, being in Greco there at USA Wrestling. But overall, I thought Fort Worth did a great job. The Texas Volunteers did a great job. So, I mean, there was really no complaints in terms of where I sat. And from a wrestling perspective, I mean, sometimes I know that there was a streaming issue with Mat 1, but for the most part, they made that, rectified that. I think the only 3 or 4 bouts were missed on that mat across all 3 styles. So I loved it. I will go back to Fort Worth. It was easy to fly into DFW. It's got pretty good nonstop connections from a lot of places. I know I was in and out pretty quickly. So even got a nice little first class upgrade because apparently there's not that many people going from Minneapolis to Dallas Fort Worth. But I thought Dallas Fort Worth did a great job as a host, and lots of space for warm up. The COVID testing and protocols weren't super crazy. You just scan it, you do your little survey. I had to do that with the NCAA previously in St. Louis, so it was nothing really new on my end, and I really enjoyed it. And I felt the vibe from the athletes was pretty good too. Plenty of space. I mean, a lot of room. It wasn't like you were cramped in a space. I mean, there's giant atriums underneath the facility for workouts. It was pretty good.
Okay, well, let me ask you this.
All right.
If all things were equal, would you prefer it still be every quad at Carver Hawkeye?
I like moving it around because I think, granted, yes, there's the community that comes out for wrestling. The Olympic Trials, I think, is different because people, no matter where it's at, are coming to the Olympic Trials. There are people, I met, there's this woman, Sarah Patton, her husband, they're Olympic junkies. They don't know anything about wrestling. They live in Texas. They were supposed to go to wrestling in Tokyo. Now there's no foreign spectators there. They're like, oh, the trials got moved down here. Well, let's go. I mean, they're looking, they just love Olympic sports. So, and they'd heard me on the Keep the Flame Alive podcast. So they were familiar with wrestling through my appearance there. And I'm thinking, what opportunity, what a great opportunity is to showcase the sport of wrestling to different parts of the country. My home area, Hampton, Virginia, put in a really solid bid in 2012, but what kept them from getting it was the circus. Ringling Brothers had basically, that was a big moneymaker. Yeah, it was a big moneymaker for the Hampton Coliseum. But Carver Hawkeye was ultimately a higher, the facility was in better shape. I mean, Hampton Coliseum's kind of ancient, but, wrestling people are going to show out for that no matter where it's at. Vegas was well attended. Even Dallas, before I started going, well attended. Hard to tell in the Dome, but there was big crowds there in Indianapolis. So I think the Olympic Trials is always going to draw a crowd. So no matter where you put it, as long as you put it in a 12, 15, 18,000 seat arena, you're going to get a good crowd. Dickies would have sat 12 to 14 if we would have had no restrictions. So I love Carver. I think Carver is iconic for wrestling. I think though, Carver is a place you go for college events because you don't really get that Carver mystique, that going to Mecca feel at Carver for the Olympic Trials as you do an Iowa dual meet. There is nothing like an Iowa dual meet at Carver Hawkeye. And I've been around the world. I've seen crazy Turks and Azeris chanting at the top of I've been in venues in Russia that are gigantic, small venues in Denmark. Who knows what that was in Uzbekistan. But I think that moving it around and putting a bid, I can't wait to see it in State College, in 4 years. We could have seen it this time. They've offered them in 2024. So I don't think the trials, wherever the trials go, they're going to do well because it's the trials. People go to the trials. World team trials, that's disappointing. You need to put that where there's fans that will show up. But you can move the Olympic trials around.
What did you think about? I mean, I look at it. I know where you were seated. I saw where you were seated. So I know that you can't watch 4 matches at once or even during finals and consolations where there's starting to be less matches going on. I know you can't pay attention to everything, but what did you think just in terms of your eyeballs and about the Greco portion of the tournament, level of wrestling, so on and so forth?
I got to see some guys that I hadn't seen a lot. And be honest with you, because I haven't traveled a ton to see a lot of Greco, and some of these guys have not yet made world teams that at trips I've been on. They've been on maybe junior, U23, or cadet world teams, but I was traveling at those age groups 2017, 2018. So I've missed the guys. I've seen Lamont, but I haven't seen, and I've seen Dalton Roberts. I'm looking at my 50 kilo. I covered D3, so I knew Finfinger. But I didn't really know how Travis Rice wrestled. Sammy Jones is an enigma to me. I want to know more about him. I saw Joey Palmer wrestle in college. I covered Randy Moreno coming through. So there's names that I know, but then we get into Alston Nutter, Nolan Baker, who just dropped a what's up in the chat. Xavier Johnson, saw him at Fine Lex. So getting to see them again and again and starting to understand their styles is one thing that'll help me moving forward. But Benji Peak, watching him and Calvin in Coralville just go crazy, having fun. And it was just like, and then now those are the guys that were having such a blast before the finals. And then, looking at Benji Peak coming as like, wait, this guy was an 11 seed in the challenge tournament and comes through and makes the national team. I mean, there's stories that I love about the trials, and you see careers. I remember when Joe Betterman emerged in 2005 to make the national team with those true third matches. So those are things that I really remember about watching this tournament, the trials and things of that nature. So looking at the depth, I still got to understand styles. I know that, certain wrestlers, I mean, you see Ryan Mango wrestle, you know what you're going to get because he's been, an accomplished guy on the mats. But, I hadn't had a chance to watch Jessie Porter a lot. I knew more about Alexis because, she was more visible on social media. But I knew the family. I thought it was a real unique thing that you had a brother-sister combination, going through at the senior level at the same time. Pat Smith's a guy that's right here in town who I've gotten to know pretty well. Joe Rao is another D3 guy that I've always, had a really good affinity for just as a human being. And then, looking at Johnny Stefanowicz's, growth, we're basically just giving away the entire show right now. But, there's so many of these stories that it doesn't matter the style from a news perspective because Johnny Stefanowicz is an amazing story. Braxton Amos hasn't even wrestled a college match yet in a style that he doesn't know how long he's going to be wrestling Greco because, Chris Bono kind of looked lost out there coaching Greco. So, I mean, and I before we even get into this, I wanted to make sure that, guys like Peyton Omania and Lucas Sheridan, they got.
You did a wonderful job. I don't mean to cut you, but the fact that you did that and that you kept mentioning Halverson over and over, that was awesome. I guarantee that it was touching. I guarantee that it was appreciated. That was awesome.
I hope it was because we had two moments. I mean, obviously with the women's side, Jenna Burkett's story kind of was the feel good story. Her performance was the feel good story of the tournament on the women's side. So I felt like John Sachs had talked to me beforehand, and he's from that area, and he was wearing the Club Duels shirt. That
Junior Club Duels.
Yeah, he was wearing that. He goes, hey, yeah. He points to it, he goes, Halverson. So I was like, I got something in mind for that. So, I mentioned it at least, when Peyton was up there and when Sharon was out there. And of course I had to throw Halverson headlock in there at the end.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I had to throw that in there. But yeah,
Miller might not have liked it, but I mean, it was awesome.
Well, I mean, Miller's got a mustache that everybody dreams about having. So he's already got an advantage. And then, you get the guys that I've covered in college, Colton Schultz, Adam Kuhn. So to answer your question, I don't know if it is answering your question. I'm getting, it's a long-winded response to, and as I look through it, I was like, wow, I actually know more about the Greco guys than I give my own self credit for. But just, to see the names that come through. I saw Max come through in Fargo. I mean, I saw an opportunity Northern Michigan gave him. So there's the personalities that I really enjoy seeing wrestle, and then to watch them and see, okay, I've got a chance to actually pay attention to them and call a match and see them get their hand raised and call them to get their hand raised. So it's an opportunity for me in my role as an announcer to give them that call that mostly only Division I. Actually, I'm not going to say only. The NAIA guys, the D3 guys, the NAIA guy, D1, D3, NAIA get those calls, as a PA situation. So I just want to pop the Greco names just like I do everybody else. So I want to, from my perspective, I also want to make it a championship performance. When they get their hand raised, it's a special moment. So that's part of my job there too.
Yeah, that's a great point. First off, I mean, I've heard you. I mean, I was at trials that you've done, for crying out loud. But yeah, not a lot of people get that. At least I don't think they do. Maybe they do. I don't mean to not give people credit for that, but it's that what happens in this tournament, it's different than World Team Trials. And I'm somebody who happens to believe that the World Championships very often are a tougher tournament than the Olympics.
Well,
so
yeah, you got 2 more rounds to get through. I mean, it's
2 more rounds, and there's too much chaos.
At minimum. I mean, maybe only in the women's weights, some of the non-Olympic women's weights, that it drops below 32. I mean, we're looking at and Greco usually has more entries than men's
45,
freestyle.
46. I've seen 67 kilos was 46, I think, last time.
Yeah, usually it's the year before the Olympics. That's when they load up. Everybody and their mother's going because they need to get I think one year, I want to say it was in Istanbul. One of the Greco weights
2011
had 50. Yeah, it had 54 in a weight class, if I'm not mistaken. It's nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Worlds is an infinitely tougher tournament to win, but it doesn't have the prestige. I mean, Olympic committees don't pay out for world medals as much as they do in Olympic gold.
Well, but see, somebody like Hall, they would argue that's exactly why the Olympics are tougher. because guys are fighting for their livelihoods, literally. Like everybody gets like crumbs, they get something if they get a world medal, whatever country we're talking about.
Everybody gets the crumbs. You got, you want to think it's bullshit. Come on.
So that's my best Dennis Hall impression. Well, it's not very good, but.
Well, he said one time and I know that it sounds funny, but I get what he means, just at least via optics, not because I was ever in the tournament, for crying out loud. But I remember one year, it was the Olympics. I forget which year exactly. But I remember that morning he was like, man, this tournament's just different. It's like they're all on crack. And like, I mean, it is a different kind of vibe, I think. But anyway, no, when a wrestler of any repute, I think, of any skill level, any station in their career, whether that's their first Olympic trials and they are your Benji Peak or your Austin Nutter or your Nolan Baker or your whoever you are, or you're someone who's 29, 30, 31, whatever it is. The tournament is automatically perceived different by the athlete. There's absolutely no question about it. Even if some of them say, oh yeah, it's just another tournament. It's absolutely not just another tournament. And for those who have memorable days, whether they make national team or they make the actual Olympic team, it's something they're not going to ever forget. And there's a big responsibility, I think, that comes with that from a media perspective. I mean, like for your OG street cred media for wrestling in the United States, but it's like when Stefanowicz beat Joe Rao, you went 1, 2, 3, 4 United States Marine Corps. Okay,
he's a Marine,
and yeah, but
I'm also a fan of Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, that's so psycho. But it's like his whole family will remember that. He'll remember that. And I look at, and I'm not trying to be anything when I say this. Like if there's any pretense, I hope an anvil drops from the sky and hits me.
It says Acme on it, By the way, who the hell uses the term anvil in wrestling except the Hart Foundation? Okay, you're the first person in the history of wrestling to use the word anvil on a podcast.
You were going to tell me you weren't sad when Jim Neidhart died?
Dude, a hardcore Hart Foundation mark when I was a kid growing up.
Oh, are you kidding me? Every time I see a Bret Hart article,
I wanted to be him for Halloween. Google. I just couldn't grow the goatee like that back in the day. I was one of the Dudley Boys for Halloween once. But I looked a lot more like
Dudley Boys.
They
went into Hall of Fame a couple years ago.
I mean, I look more like Bubba Ray. Obviously, you give me some fat glasses, and I had a goatee for a while, and I had that white camo, black and white camo they used to have. So, but anyway, back to your anvil point. So you were saying,
well, it's just like okay, I don't know too much about how other platforms kind of attacked the trials on their end. I don't know. Like, I don't know how other people wrote about it. I don't know what they normally do or anything like that. I think there's different styles of recaps and updates and things like that, but it's like 5 point wise, right? Like I get my chops busted about that sometimes because it's like, I forget. I think it was Andy Hamilton or was Gary Abbott. I forget what tournament I was at. I think it might have been Raleigh Trials or I don't remember. Anyway, but I remember one of them like walked away saying, "Okay, I'm still doing the recap. Everybody's leaving." And somebody said something. Somebody said like, "Oh, good luck writing your novel," and that's cool and all. I get it. I absolutely get it for sure. But at the same time, it's like. I think there is indeed a heavy responsibility that comes along with documenting our sport. I think that I'm not saying that, I mean, listen, I'm not dissing anybody when I say this. I don't mean to be. It's just like, okay, well, it would be one thing if I could do a recap and just give you the results. That'd be super duper because it would take me about 26 minutes. And
that's a rather exact time because I don't think you came up with 26 minutes arbitrarily. I feel like you've timed this out.
No, you know why? 26 is the number I go to automatically because my birthday's on 26. I think that's why.
I'll give you. Okay. Then
That's
it's more
really
than just
good.
arbitrary. See me,
You're
I would
right.
use,
There's no way it's random.
I would use
There's no way.
37 just so I can use the Clerks reference. 37
Oh,
and get away with
Clerks.
it.
I haven't thought about that movie in a long time.
I'll just say pay attention next time you hear me on a call somewhere and there's 37 seconds left and about. I give Clerks quite a bit. I mean, I'm probably probably giving myself away there on that one. It's like, and a minute 37 left in the bout. 37. That happened. That's happened. I believe that happened.
Yeah, your little side comments are.
I can get away with it more on a stream than I can the PA. The Olympic trials are like a little bit more buttoned up, so had to slide a couple of those in there very subtly. But yeah, so you're talking about your 26-minute wrap up.
Well, the way that I see it is this, at least the way that I try to always remember it, especially if I'm getting tired. And, and if we're talking about Greco-Roman wrestling and we're talking about trying to somehow or another translate that into like a thorough literary perspective with a narrative and not in prose, well, then the way that I have to see it in order to do the 5-point move stuff, the way that I do the 5-point move stuff is that I have to remember that like an athlete and, his coaches and his family and his friends and his teammates and everybody who's in their circle, they're all going to read that. And to the people to whom he is closest, some of them are going to print it out. And now, not to sound arrogant, but like I know that also thousands of other people are going to read it too. And it's like, okay, well, so we can't just be like, yes, he won, and in the first period, congratulations, he got parterre, and for some reason or another, he was able to gut the guy, and now we're up 3-0. It's especially for the bigger stuff. I wish that it could be snappy. But I
feel like, from my perspective, you still granted, you've got your niche market. And when we say niche, Greco-Roman wrestling in America is extremely niche in terms of the grand scheme of just sports websites. And even in wrestling, I feel like when I'm reading some of your recaps, you're trying to educate a new reader while not completely talking, beneath the Stefanovitzes of the world who are readers like, yeah, I know all this stuff, but you're still saying things that they know, but you're also putting them across in a way that like a first time reader is going to be like, okay, you're trying to hook them into following this stuff more than just like, okay, who won? So I can definitely see the mindset of the longer form recap.
Well, I like to think that there's context clues. I think that there are certain contextual bridges there to where you always, with wrestling, I think that, at least I do with Greco anyway, I think that you're assuming a warm audience, right? I mean, for the most part, you're assuming a warm audience. So even if you're not really into Greco, maybe you're even an athlete's cousin or grandparent and you really don't care about wrestling in general. I like to think that you can piece enough stuff together because I try not to use too many names of techniques. So Robbie Smith, who wasn't in the trials, and I don't want to go on a tangent about that, Jason. I'll save it for another time. But nobody even bothered to mention that he was not in a bracket, and I'm a little surprised by it. But Robbie Smith and a few others, Andy, you can count in that group. Hall, who doesn't even care at all about any of this, but what I'll do.
Does Hall read?
Yeah. So once in a while, I'll get a text. I'll be like, "Good article, man." I'm like, "Which one?" There were like 7 this week.
Hey, I just want to tell you good stuff on that story. Bye.
Yeah, right. It's like, yeah, okay. You probably read like the first 3 sentences and then the last 3, like a 7th grade book report. But no, but like Robbie Smith, or like I said, Basic or Jocelyn or somebody, like I have like a little group to where something will happen in a match. And I honestly, if there's a name for it, like technically, if there's a name for it, I might not know it, or something will happen and I might not understand what might be the best way to describe it. So I will get in touch with one of these gentlemen and I will say, okay, did you watch it? No. Okay. Well, let me try to send you a clip, or I will try my best to describe what happened to them so they can be like, oh, Tim, no, that's what this is. You know that. Remember this? And I'll be, okay, fine.
Well,
Something
for
like
example, that would be like Mitch McKee in freestyle. The term head pinches come in a lot. Well, like depending on how you set it up, regionally it's different. I always looked at it regardless of how it was set up. It's like, okay, I'm just, it's pretty much a kind of a front headlock roll through is how I kind of explain it. Or there's the chest lock kind of thing that the Paulsons were really good at. Very similar. They're different. Your technique snobs are cringing right now because I'm generalizing it way too much. But that's the point is, like in folk style, a jackknife is a 3/4 Nelson is a who knows what, like, I don't know, rum runner for some, I don't know, something like that. All the different terminologies can be somewhat confusing, even to those lifers, because
quarter Nelson like this,
hit him with the barnyard. Well, then there's 3/4, 3/4, 3/4. Various. Okay. I mean, even the 3/4 Nelsons have different hand positions based on where you're taught and where everything you up to New England. Everybody thinks every roll is a Peterson. Watch the Peterson. That was a Wayne's roll. Watch the Peterson. Standing Randy. Something like that. So anyway, back to the where were we? I think we are. Here's the thing. I am now immersed in what is a 5 Point Move podcast here on Short Time. I love this because we haven't even talked about the first weight yet.
No. Well, but I mean, right. I mean, you came up with AP style. You're a copy editor, right?
Yeah, 8 years as a copy editor.
Okay, well, right. So with AP style, even to like a lesser extent, something like Chicago or whatever the other style guides, it's like, okay, there's there's a way that you're going to represent data. Mm-hmm. There's a way that you're going to represent numbers. And then also there's kind of like a little bit of a rigid format how you're going to lay out the story, okay? Because we just want what happened when, we'll all move on. And
inverted
the good thing about basically. Wrestling, and the good thing about wrestling and wrestling media, and I guess in this current era, is that, I mean, it's, obviously, whatever the percentile is of it is digital. I would assume 90% of it. It's like, okay, well, you could be a little bit more expressive. And so I take that kind of responsibility a little seriously. I don't mean that to sound like, my left shoulder will never get warm from patting myself on the back.
Well, Barry Horowitz style.
This is so good that you're like, that's right, because you're only a year younger than me. But I just, the way that I see it is like, okay, well, if we're going to recap something like the Olympic Trials, well, then like it's going to be different. You have to do each match. You have to do each match of the finals. You have to whatever. You're going to have to really recap the national team matches. You can't recap every round of the tournament.
Right.
I mean, that's just not going to happen. But it's like that part of it. Like, so Alex Steen, I think, and I don't know where he's at or if anybody's given that guy a job, but if they haven't, they probably should, because I think he's very talented. I think he's got a great mind for this stuff. But Alex Steen one time said something better than I ever could. And we were at the New York Athletic Club tournament.
Was this the year he wrestled Aymar?
It is the year he got right. So he got like absolutely plastered there. Yeah, he got killed really badly. But that was the day before I was there, because that was freestyle.
Yeah, and they did a chalk outline, then clean the lines.
Yeah,
sorry,
totally.
Alex, I love you, brother.
Yeah, no. Well, dude, he shot a shot. But he said it very well.
Yeah.
Is that he said, we're just talking about how we do this and stuff. And, 5 Point was still like pretty new at that point, right? Because that's 2016. So that's November. I don't know, whatever, 7-8 months since launch by then. But like, I'm over here and I'm like, there's the finals, and you had Hayden Tuma versus Tanakura, and you had the non-Olympic weight world team trials with that, which was like Sancho, and Chris Gonzalez and John Anderson versus Pat Martinez and whatever. And we're talking about this, and I'm like, and I lived kind of close. I only live, even in Brick, New Jersey, I only live 35, 40 minutes from Midtown. And like, I'm putting pressure on myself, just crazy pressure. I'm just saying, I'm like, well, I got to find a way to. And Steen was like, Steen don't write, like, even as a reporter, he doesn't write as much as I do. But he said, I would rather do something well than do it fast. And I was like, absolutely. Like, that is, see, because you have that too, a little bit. You do have a competitive sort of, at least under the surface, infrastructure, I think, in wrestling media, where people are trying to get news out and they're trying to get this out and blah, 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 blah. It just mirrors everything else that happens in society. And it's like, look, I don't care. Like, I know that, like, for instance, I mean, God bless Mike Willis and Taylor Miller. I don't mean this towards them or Gary Abbott or anything like that. But like, USA Wrestling's recap for something very well might beat time-wise, might beat a 5-point recap in terms of time. I'm like, go ahead. Like, we're doing something very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, I mean, you don't
have the freestylers to worry about, so you can spend more time. They've got 3 styles to get churned out.
Sure, and I can hone in on it and everything else. It's not even a chip on the shoulder kind of thing with 5-point anymore. I think to a lot of people, even at times, including myself, I think at first couple of years there was a chip on the shoulder thing, because the people who are into 5-point by and large are like kind of like super hardcore loyal into it. But like, it's not even that anymore. It's just like 5-point has expanded to the point, not to overuse the word in the website here, but I think it's expanded to where that responsibility feels a little bit heavier for me than I think it did even a few years ago. I think because, the numbers have obviously increased and things like that. And so I just want to make sure that, like, I kind of, like, if I'm going to write about something, I want to make sure that I'm representing what happened, not only accurately, but thoroughly. And I wanted to, represent the athletes well, because chances are, they're going to bookmark it, share it, and whatever. So like, it's sometimes I do. I have to admit, I feel incredible pressure. Like, absolutely, I feel incredible pressure. It's
understandable, because one thing about the internet, and in starting the website that I did back, Mad Talk Online, and its first iteration was founded in October 1997. So I would talk.
So you were in high school?
No, my freshman year of college. So I graduated high school in 97.
So you did graduate in 97, but your birthday's after mine. When's your birthday?
August 20th.
Yeah, that's right. So you're almost a year younger than me. I'm January.
Yeah, so I was 17, turned 18. 3 days later, I'm in college. I'm not going to tell you how long it took me to become 23. That's another story. And it wasn't 5 years. So I we had a radio show, and I worked for the newspaper. And by the time I'd started getting my stuff into the paper as a beat writer covering the high school wrestling scene, get my notebook, getting the rankings in, I'm going back to that Peninsula District tournament that I would cover. And I remember there was a kid, that kid named Jimmy Rogers hits a cement job. And I explained, actually, it was a mixer and a job are 2 different moves. He hits the cement mixer. So just for those of you in the Lehigh Valley, give me a little bit of grace on this explanation. So Jimmy hits it and pins the top seed in the district. And I wrote, Jimmy Rogers kicked off the tournament with a bang for the Crabbers, hitting a cement mixer to pin, top seeded. I think it was Greg Todd from Gloucester. That's 20 years ago. I don't remember that. It's crazy. But my editor goes, "What's a cement mixer?" And I kind of explained. He goes, "Can't you write that?" I go, "Jim, I got 12 inches to write this. It'll take me 2 paragraphs to fully adequately explain what Jimmy did." So whereas if you're in the Allentown Morning Call or the Easton Express Times or the Star Ledger in Jersey, you can write cement mixer and 95% of your readership is going to figure it out or know what it is. So, when you've got the web, you can be a lot more verbose and you can explain things kind of more granularly than you can like for a wider, broader audience. It's like, okay, basically everything in covering high school wrestling for a newspaper became throw, or rolled through, or that was pretty much like the 2 words I got to use with, even with my limited scope of technical expertise. even I had to dumb it down even more. So that's the one thing that's great about the internet is when you're writing for, you're not necessarily writing for like, you don't have to worry about not getting that thing in there. Whereas like you said, Gary, Taylor, and Mike, they've got, okay, they don't, the fifth most important story to them might get the last two sentences, whereas the fifth most important story to them might be the second most important to you. You're going to spend that much more time on it than they will. So, I mean, I don't think there's pressure, but understand people, you're writing for your audience, which is one thing I do like about 5-Point-Move.
Yes, I am. I am, but right. But the pressure that I mean, look, pressure is a mental construct. But what I mean by that isn't, it's don't get me wrong. There's times where it's an event pressure, like, okay, like Zagreb or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, this is how much time I have between rounds if I want to do a recap of what happened, round of 16 and quarterfinals and blah, 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 blah. And because the semifinals are going to start, like, there's that kind of deadline pressure, which everybody who's ever done journalism at the most Mickey Mouse level understands that. But something
that's also a self-appointed deadline, because really there's no deadline. It's the deadline's what you want to make it. For example, again, I'll use that same high school story. I have to go back into the paper and get it done by, 10:10, so it can be out for first edition, which ships at 10:45, because we've got at that point we've got 3 NBA games leading. We've also got the Admirals playing at Scope. There was a major trade in the NFL. There was a Friday night, high school. There's all sorts of stuff to deal with deadlines. They're a little more crazy with the print. So I would say from my experience, don't beat yourself up over a self-appointed deadline. That being said, my preview guide deadline is my preview guide deadline is like make or break, because I got to get the heck out of Dodge to get to St. Louis, for example. But yeah,
by the way,
nuances of journalism.
I loved your preview guide show with Shane Sparks. I saw that.
Yeah, Sparks he's always good for stuff like that. I appreciate it. So let's see. I think what I need to do is we need to pick up this part of the conversation on your podcast.
I would love to do it.
Which
you're responsible for. Look at this. This is you. And I can't find the pop filter. I thought I packed it with me. Maybe Andy has it. I have music. Everything I have, you've given me.
Well,
that's right in front of my face.
Here, I got one.
See that one's even smaller than the one I've got.
Well, I got the same. Gee, look, it's the same microphone. Although I'm not using that microphone. I've got like 6 of these now. Every time I see them on like Amazon, pretty low, I end up picking them up. If they're under like $60, I'll get like 2 of them.
I gotta get a new one.
So
otherwise,
Thrasher
I'm gonna take one of my kids' shirts and wrap it around it.
Thrasher wants to know if we've already talked about Max now.
Oh, Thrasher.
Thrasher, we are here for Max.
Well, you mentioned him at outset.
We did mention Thrasher. I mentioned that I was surprised that we have not seen Max Nowry on the screen yet, although Tim did tweet about it already and quote tweeted it. So let's just start with the Nowry weight class. We're gonna go. We're not gonna go all completely 5-Point-Move on the weights, but we're having a good time talking wrestling. I love it because I tell you what, as just a wrestling fan, I love what you've done with your show. I'm glad it's part of the network, because it gives me that's a
privilege. Thank you.
Listening to the personalities and getting to understand, like, oh, Max jumps in, starts making fun of people. I'm here for that. I'm here for all of that. So I love all of that stuff. So let's go with the challenge tournament. Ryan Mango comes out of this thing beating I'm sorry, WCAP. I'm calling him Mike Finfinger. I'm just going to do it because he is Mike Finfinger from the Iron Range of Hibbing, Minnesota. That was a pretty solid weight.
Wait a minute.
What?
Wait, do you know Boss Baby? The movie Boss Baby.
Briefly. I've seen bits and pieces of it.
It's such a good movie, and in the movie,
is that the one with Alec Baldwin? Is he in that?
Yes. Okay. He's the voice of the Boss Baby. And so the Boss Baby, it's Tim Templeton's the older brother. And so when he meets the Boss Baby, he's like, middle name Leslie, and he goes like that and laughs. Every time I see Leslie printed out, I'm like, come on, man.
You know, I want you to do that too. Is Les Gutches.
No, I'm not doing that, man.
His first name is Leslie, and I might be one of the only few people on the planet that have called him that to his face and lived. Because if you've seen his biceps recently, yeah.
He's very, very, very muscular.
He is
very muscular.
He is quite large. Mango over Finfinger in the challenge final. Finfinger beats Sammy Jones, who was tell you what, you want to talk about a guy that if you're not familiar with Greco and you see Sammy Jones go out there with the dreads, the tats, it's like you just on appearance alone, you're like, I want to watch that guy.
Absolutely.
And, he put up some big moves. This weight did not disappoint when it came to action.
No, you know what? It's funny that you say that because first and foremost, people might laugh and things like that over goofball stuff that we talk about, but Sammy's look actually did do something, because there were 2 instances during the weekend where I heard people remark in the stands, because section 110 press area was right, obviously near people in the crowd. And I heard people say stuff about Sammy. You see this guy, because he looks like he's like gonna go absolutely freaking crazy out there. The way, I mean, he's Wild Man. That's why we call him Wild Man Sam. It's the whole package.
He also didn't have the traditional path through wrestling growing up. So,
he didn't. He's
see him
more of a
show
full
up.
timer.
Yeah, well, you see, yes, but he also, you didn't see him in the high school rankings. You didn't see, he wasn't, a household, and come from Louisiana. Name one household name from Louisiana. Daniel Cormier. Okay, Scott Gibbons. Those are 2 you can name right there.
I only knew who one of those were.
Abby Nettie. She's from Louisiana on the women's side. So, but we get Ryan Mango coming through, and this gave me an opportunity to throw Stanford under the bus. Granted,
you did great. You did
very
great.
Different
Once
way,
again.
More politically
hashtag
correct.
Keep Stanford Wrestling.
Ryan Mango from hashtag Keep Stanford Wrestling. Ryan makes the finals. He put out on social media that he had been dealing with a pretty severe injury, and which even makes his performance even more amazing. But let's talk about Ildar Iliyev here. The story about coming to America. He's part of the Army WCAP program. It's his second Olympic team for a second different country, and there's going to be 13 years in between. So, just in your interactions with the Greco crew, I mean, what is it about Ildar that has him still wrestling at such a high level?
Well, I think he saved his body a little bit, for sure. At the beginning of the quad after the 2016 trials, he actually had a knee thing. And so that took him off until after that Olympic trials where he had Thielke in the final. That's when Thielke had that incredible run at the trials. And then Thielke had that, obviously, in Turkey, the second world qualifiers, maybe the most memorable tournament I've seen in adulthood, really. One of, anyhow. But then Ildar was off to Armed Forces February 2017. Well, he leaves Armed Forces February 2017. The next week, he's in Denmark, and he goes and he wins Thor Masters or whatever. He wins Thor Masters. And at the end of April, he made the 2017 World Team. And so right there is a kind of a good, at least for me lately, that's what I've reflected back on, is how Ildar, after the last trials, he had a long break. And now, granted, he's gone ahead and getting surgery, but like, he's 28 years old, 29 years old at the time, and he gave his body a break. I mean, he's been wrestling at a high level. He was wrestling at a high level before he went ahead and qualified 55 kilograms for Uzbekistan in 2007 at 19 years old. I mean, he was at a high level even before then. Like, he never had really a break. And sometimes these little injuries, they actually give guys a break in a way, because they're resting everything else while they're recovering. And I thought Ildar had even in his match in the 2017 Paris Worlds was, very exciting. And he wound up losing in that tournament to a guy he wound up crushing and destroying at the Military Worlds. But anyway, I digress. The reason why is because Ildar does not have to grind himself to a nub in order to feel potent, confident. He's so good technically from every position that I don't think he needs to turn his body into dust in order to perform well. I think that is why he is still viable. I think that is why he probably would still be viable, hopefully, for a couple even years after this, because I don't know if he plans on slowing down yet. But he also, Ildar, the only guys he's dropped matches to even internationally are guys who, lately anyway, are guys who have either won medals at one point or another or have been very, very close themselves. So Yeah, I just think I think Spencer, Bruce, and Sean have also done a really good job of managing his workload too. Because I mean, Ildar is 33, so and 33 at 60 kilograms is not 33 at 87 or something like that. So, I mean, no offense, but I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, because when like
the truth.
Baumgartner talks about this when he was wrestling in his later years. He goes, "Smarter, not harder." And when you're at that age and you got the young bucks coming through that are still wide open, it's more old man tricks, I mean, I was talking to Chandler a little bit before we got out there, and we're talking about when Jake Clark qualified, and it's like, yeah, he's like, well, he can get some of those old man tricks sometimes, but they're not fooling the veterans as much anymore as they used to. But we'll move on to 67 kilos. Ellis Coleman comes out of the challenge tournament. Loses to Alex Sancho in the final series. Ellis leaves his shoes on the mat. One of the things that Ellis obviously is known for was the flying squirrel in his junior world championships bronze medal year. It was a viral sensation. The guy was, he was,
on Sports Center, number one.
Sports Center. It was, Sports Illustrated or CBS or NBC or a bunch of one of these Olympic sites did the explanation. It might have been SI that did the pictorial of how he actually did the move and the run up for it. I know that at one of the Greco practices, Mark Henry from the WWE was there, and he was like, he wanted to get a picture with Ellis. He was like, let me get a picture with the flying squirrel. And of course, this is 7 kilos ago, and I remember the first time I saw Ellis hit that move was against Betterman at the Sunkist back, I want to say, let me think, when did I get the job at USA Wrestling? 09. It would have been 09 Sunkist.
Yeah.
And that was, 08 Sunkist. When was it? 08, 09? It might have been 09 Sunkist. He hit it, and people were like, the heck was that? And then he hits it again. It's like, yeah, I saw him do that to Betterman, and he actually didn't score it like he did at the Junior Worlds. But, Ellis had a good run, man, and just, super likable guy. And you could hear his wife from anywhere in the building. So, you always knew when Ellis was on the mat. And, we would talk about Ellis retiring. I do want to talk about Benji Peak's good run, making that national team solid win, big throws over Xavier Johnson, who, had that breakout performance in Final X. But before we talk about the guys that didn't win it, let's talk about the guy that did win it, Alex Sancho. What were your takeaways on him, 2-0-3-1 in the best of 3 series?
Yeah, not to sound like one of those people. Do you remember the show on ESPN? What was it? The Sports Reporters. It was with
Dick Schaap and all those guys.
Yes, yeah, right. Where like somebody would say, "It's funny you should say that, Jason, because I just wrote about this."
Okay, Bob Ryan.
Ryan.
It was Mike
the
Lupica,
Boston Herald.
Mike Lupica, Bob Ryan,
yes.
Dick Schaap, and usually what was her name? Jackie McMullen. For a long time was on there. But Dick Schaap was always something that sounded very painful. So continue.
Right. Well, first off, Alex, I mean, everybody saw it. I think everybody saw how much it meant to Alex. And it's tough. It's tough, obviously. And we deal with this in our country in all styles. I think it's certainly more prevalent. I don't think. I mean, it's more prevalent in Greco because we're a lot more clustered together. I think on this side of the fence, where guys are training with each other, and now we're in a final against each other. But you gotta really think it's how unique of a situation that is and was for just on this alone, and that is. Alex, people, I don't know if they remember now, but Alex beat Ellis in 2016 trials, basically just to make national team. And Alex then again beat Ellis in November 2017 at the new 2016 at the non-Olympic world team trial thing at the, the New York Athletic Club tournament. And so, right off they had wrestled before that even, but just talking about the past quad. And it's like, but when Alex beat Ellis, it was like the way he beat him in New York. I mean, he destroyed him and there was no parterre. That was the first tournament where they took parterre out. So if if you lifted a guy, it's either because you got around him or because you took him down, not because you got, a phantom gift. And it was like, I don't know, ever since that loss, Ellis beat Alex in the national final. Ellis beats Alex in the 2017 trials final. Ellis loses match 1 of the 2018 trials to Sancho, and then he ran through Sancho, I think, matches 2 and 3. And next thing you know, Sancho's a member of WCAT. And like, yeah, sure, he and Alex knew each other and they liked each other and so on. But, a lot of us, I think, understood and knew that this was where we were getting close to the twilight of Ellis's career. And Ellis dealt with an awful triceps tear from the military worlds in 2019. I think that probably helped speed this all along, perhaps. And the birth of his 3rd kid, being 30 years old, I would imagine those were factors. But when you think about all of these finals from the other night now, I don't mean to keep looking down. I understand I'm on camera. But that one is the one that hits me the most. I happen to really love Ellis, and I mean that with a capital L. And Alex also is a very, very important person to me off wrestling, outside of wrestling. Alex is that important to me. And it was grueling for me to watch that because, it's the same thing. We've all been through it in this sport where, and I felt this way at 87, I should mention, but it's like we've all been through that in this sport where you care an awful lot about the 2 guys, and it's whatever's going to happen is going to happen. You're going to have to deal with it. But more so than any other final, I felt that this one was the richest as far as storyline, because it's like Alex has wanted nothing more than to have the spot. Would it have made sense if Ellis had, for some reason or another, lost in the challenge tournament? No, I'm sorry, but it wouldn't have made sense. Like, I mean, if it just wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been right. It wouldn't have been right if, Ellis somehow or another stubbed his toe, loses in the challenge tournament, and then it's Alex or somebody else. No, it had to be Ellis. It absolutely had to be Ellis. And on top of that, Ellis was what? Ellis began his career as an Olympian. Basically, his senior career began it as an Olympian.
Made that cut down, because that was a tough cut down to 60.
When you're that age, especially too. And so that for me anyway was heavy on my heart. And then the fact that look at who Sancho beats Ellis, and now Sancho gets to automatically become an Olympian. And I think that Ellis taking off his shoes at that exact moment, I don't know, it was as god awful it was. It was also super beautiful too. It really was. I mean, I'm not that type, and I feel it now, like it wants to push through my freaking face. But
yeah. Those of you watching on video get the full effect of my bad. Those of you listening a week later or a couple days after we record this, they're not getting emotional hands. But
no, you're not. I can reconcile it, but it was just something.
I can't. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm looking at it. No matter who the athlete is, when I see the shoes come off, I'm like, me and Dort Mayab are just like, okay, who's gonna talk? Okay, because I need a second. I need a second to capture it, because once I said it, once I give the athlete their sign off, I have to let the mic go, and I have to go, because every single time, every single time it gets me. Just going back to Othello Lucas and Fargo and Tina George coming back to leave her shoes on the mat, on the women's side, and then Molinaro left his off in freestyle. Greco, it's been more prevalent in Greco. You typically don't see the American freestylers leave their shoes on the mat very often. It's definitely been a Greco thing, more so here in the U.S.
Well, Marco Lara, now he wound up coming back very briefly for Armed Forces in February of 2018. But Marco Lara, who's not a former world team member or medalist or Olympian, but he was somebody who, I really admired from afar before even 5 Point, and he retired at the 2016 Nationals. in Vegas, the Westgate Hotel, there were hardly anybody in the place. And Marco Lara's actually bothered me a ton, because here was a guy who was just a great guy and just such a very tough competitor who did it right, conducted himself like a gentleman all of the time. And it's like, and he didn't want to probably even do it, but he kind of figured he had to. And it was like something like that even crushes me. Because sometimes I think people retire at the trials because they feel like they're supposed to. This is the appropriate place for a chapter to close, I guess.
I mean, for a lot of people, it's the end of the journey because this is what that's what they've been building for.
Right.
So,
yeah.
To see that.
Yeah.
Now, moving to two guys that aren't retiring, we'll go to 77 kilos.
Sure.
Jesse Porter coming from the number 10 spot. They were 10 in the weight in the challenge tournament. In one of the more, I don't want to say bizarre because I know I made a point to tell everybody that he had the FivePointMove.com
right
during the finals over Peyton Walsh, Virginia guy. For those of you wondering, I did throw a Virginia I call it a Virginia Easter egg in there after he beats Provisor in the quarterfinals. So there's Peyton Walsh trying to make a deep run in the tournament, and that's the name of his high school was Deep Run High School. So that's a little Virginia knowledge for you there. But Jesse Porter, Peyton Walsh, 77 kilos. This is one that if you were to draw this up, Tim, there is no way as versed in Greco as you are, there's no way you have this as the final. Or is there? I mean, you got the 4 or is it the 5? I mean, Walsh was a 4 or 5, and then Porter was a 10.
Okay, but see, listen.
We still have to qualify the weight, too.
Well, that's true, yes. But look, when you and I reach our demise on this earth, you will die having vastly infinite more knowledge of wrestling than I will. But I will say this, Mr. Jason Bryant. When it comes to certain weight class in the U.S., I don't pay any attention to seeds or where guys are seated or anything like that, who they're paired against. I mean, I know
must be one of them. Am I blowing your lead up already? This must be one of them.
77 kilograms. What would it matter? I mean, Pat Smith got matched up. Pat Smith got seated third. He was paired up with Mason Manville first round.
Yeah, that's a couple world teamers first round. Well,
they exactly right. Well, they were in the finals against each other in 2019 World Team Trials Challenge Tournament. They wrestled each other 3 times, 4 times that year, whatever it was that season. And so, but 77 kilograms, 60 kilograms, like the way that I phrased it to Linland, which I thought was, I said this before. So you know how when you say something you like, you repeat it. I said
all
like there are weights there are weights that we have that have no choice but to cannibalize each other. Like these weights are going to cannibalize each other. Like so there was no choice. It's like Jesse Porter. I know that he had to go to Last Chance because he did not have a good 2019 December National and whatever. And okay. But nobody looked at Jesse Porter as not an Olympic team trials kind of candidate. Like it's not like it was like, how did he get in to this tournament? It's just crazy,
it's not like he backdoored. He's not like he backdoored into like one of the defunct regionals, like the regionals that were so bad that when people qualified through, they're like, no, we're never having this again. We're shutting them down. You're not getting like a JV kid from a high school like showing up uncontested to a regional getting into the trials. I mean, you're talking like the last guy in the bracket is got legitimate chops. So, I mean,
well, the champion of the Last Chance qualifier almost beat the number 1 seed in the first round of the tournament, and that's Austin Morrow versus Jake Fisher. So
that's a kid I actually hadn't really had a chance to lay a whole lot of eyes on was Morrow. I mean, he had
one of the best human beings in the sport.
Yeah, hadn't had a chance. I really don't know him, so it was a chance to get there. But again, we had a situation where I think the situation here is less about, I think, Walsh versus Porter, but now the work is for Porter to qualify the weight. So for those who are unaware of the qualifying situation, of course, Greco needs 77 and 130 to qualify. I guess I'm looking for a prognosis on what Porter needs to do to qualify, what his best options are. Anybody who are his biggest landmines that he's going to have to try to go through at the last.
I have a master list somewhere.
I am not surprised. I would expect nothing less.
Well, look at it this way right off the bat, is that, Nemes and Natsakanian from Bulgaria, they're not in. There's, I mean, thankfully Armenia is, because somebody, Karapachlian, took fifth to Gorai in Nur Sultan, which you would know that. And
by the way, Nur Sultan, Kazakhstan, it does not suck. Kazakhstan was a awesome surprise on how actually cool it was. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, you know what Daniel Miller told me? He told me that because it was Astana.
Well, what used to be Astana, yeah.
Right. And that the people in the region resent the fact that it's now called Nur Sultan.
Yeah, the old president. True? Well, and what's funny is Brian Hazard, I got him to come over to announce, because it's a 9-day tournament when you're announcing. So I actually brought over, I got him to talk into bringing in a second voice so we can alternate the morning sessions of the day. So I actually have some gas left in the tank for finals, because I hit every final hard. So by about day 4 in Budapest, 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point, I was like, day 4, I'm like, world. I was just like, oh, this sucks. So I actually saved a voice, but Hazard is a teacher in Northern Virginia, and what he said is he had a student from Kazakhstan, and they were from Almaty, and they called Astana or Nur Sultan plastic capital, because it's the new capital. It's only been the capital about 20 years, so it's like plastic capital because the whole city's pretty much brand new. And it's like, well, plastic capital. They still think Almaty is the old city. Just seeing just that part of the country apparently is super beautiful. But anyway, getting off the test. So back to Porter, and you're talking about the minefield that he might have to go through.
It's a tough road. It's a tough road. Fatih, well, it won't be Cengiz maybe, but Turkey's not qualified as well. And now we're coming up on the Asian qualifier right now, practically. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, I do expect I do expect Korea to be okay, but
Korea because we know the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is out.
No, they're out. No, I'm thinking of Kim Jong-un, and
I can't say the NK word. I just if I say it once, I feel like they go, you work for UWW, you said the NK word. I can't know. Yeah, it's DPR Korea or Democratic People's Republic of Korea on my watch, sir.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame because they've had terrific athletes over the course of the history of our sport.
One year was it was in Budapest in 2013. That Greco final was phenomenal. Yeah, the DJ was right on it, playing like Gangnam Style right after the match, and they'd start dancing. I was like, what? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's.
I didn't know even how to pronounce that just now until you said it. By the way,
I've just Opam Gangnam Style. Anyway, so let's finish up the thought.
Well, look, obviously whoever was going to come out of 77, they have a hard assignment. There's no doubt about it. But the only thing is that Jesse Porter, I got to be honest with you, Jesse Porter actually might have a little bit of an advantage, and that is he has a very unique style and approach. He is not, he's not conventional. He's not the whistle blows, that first contact is like some kind of,
he's not going to shoulder block you right off the whistle.
Exactly right. He has a very deliberate way, I think, of setting up his entries, going for his tie-ups. He doesn't just commit to one thing. And, a lot of U.S. guys are so tough. They're so intense that they'll commit to one position, and they're such hard fighters is that they don't know when to let it go and move on to something else. This position's not working for me. Let me move on to something else. No, it's like, no, I have to win this. And it's like, Porter's like, nah, it's okay. Like, I'm just going to go ahead. I'll, put my right foot, cut it outside your left foot, and then we'll just start over. Fine. I don't know. I plus from parterre, he can be lethal. The only problem is that he's going to need to defend as if his life depends on it. But he does have a style that they're not used to, by and large. And when I say they, I mean the rest of the planet.
And for a lot of them, it's going to be their first look at him. So guys like that are dangerous. That's where we talk about the first timers. When they're in their first trip, they're not known entities to the world, so they can surprise people with how they're like, because you don't really have a whole lot of film on them. Now I guess the internet that's kind of changed up a little bit. You can get on Flow, you can get on YouTube, you can see the videos from these tournaments. But so that's again one thing, the mystery factor maybe in Porter's advantage here. Moving to 87, which Joe Rao gets the weight qualified, sitting out best of 3, and then Mr. Vera gets his passport. He is eligible for the trials, and that was the thing. I think from an outsider's perspective, you see this guy come in with bona fide Greco chops. I know he doesn't like to mention anything about his home nation, so I'll just respect his wishes there. But he came from an island 90 miles south of Miami. He's really good at Greco-Roman wrestling, and he was probably, even though he had to go through the last chance, I think conventional wisdom would have said he was the favorite to win the spot. And then Johnny Stefanowicz comes in and pulls the first of 2 upsets to win the spot. And I guess when I'm watching him with Stefanowicz wrestle Vera, and I'm like, okay, he's down. And then it's like, holy crap, he hits the big 4, huge ovation. And I'm like, it was nuts. I mean,
no, you know better. Better.
Did you see this coming? I mean, it felt like that took the wind out of Vera's sails here. I know Johnny's he's a fighter. I mean, it was one thing was cool is I did take a picture of him and Chance wrestling at the same time. So I've got a picture on my phone of Chance Marsteller and his brother Johnny Stefanowicz wrestling in the trials at the same time. So I've interrupted you now. Now you can go with your thought.
No, I interrupted you. No, well, number one, no, I mean, I don't play that. Not that you, Jason, for crying out. I mean, my how I do this. I don't do the prediction sort of stuff. And
right, I don't care who wins either. But there's right. When you're looking at it from an outsider's perspective, Joe Rao's a friend of mine. I've gotten to know Johnny a little bit, but so it's like seeing, and I'll be quite honest with you, and no disrespect to anybody that was in the field. And it was like, oh, okay, so Vera's in here. Joe won the trials in 16, didn't get the opportunity to wrestle in Rio, and it's like, you want to talk about a guy that like embodies hard work, like one-time state qualifier, wins Fargo, was nobody's radar, goes D3, places at Midlands, wins D, like one of the funniest, just genuinely great people in the sport of wrestling. And then
he's one of my best friends.
You see this guy come in and people like automatically, oh man, too bad for Joe. And then Johnny beats him and you're like, all right, Joe and Stefanowicz to determine the spot. And it's a great series. And then, Johnny Stefanowicz wrestled his balls off and earned that spot. And it was just, and then Joe leaves his shoes on the mat. And that was one that hit me pretty hard. So, I mean, I tried to have fun with that one a little bit and saying you can chow with Rao on Instagram. But that, when I turned that mic off, I definitely had some tears to wipe away there just because Joe's the man. So we can maybe talk about Joe a little bit before we talk about, just the performance Johnny Stefanowicz had. I mean, this is a guy that never made the state tournament in Pennsylvania. It's like a 125-pound senior. John Anderson retired at this weight too. I was faucets on that one because I covered him in high school. So a lot of stuff to go in here, a lot of stuff to dive into.
Yeah. 87, first off. I don't know how many casuals are going to watch and listen to this. But 87 kilograms has been throughout this quad my favorite weight category to cover. Certainly ever since the 2017 World Team Trials. I don't want to. It's tough for me. Joe Rao is one of my best friends. Just in totality is. And so, I mean, he does this stuff well because he obviously has helped out a ton with 5-Point-Move and everything like that. And he doesn't hide stuff. Like he doesn't hide. Like you tell, there's certain athletes who are, Sancho being king among them as well. Like you get them on the record and it's like, I don't care at all. I'll tell you my absolute deepest, darkest thoughts. Like it doesn't matter. But Joe Rao, he alluded to some of this pretty recently on the record back in February. And, he's had his struggles over the past, following the high of qualifying the weight last March. The pandemic No, I mean, that's not an excuse for Joe by any stretch. If anything, like he had like a kind of a little bit of an advantage because he competed at the Rumble on the rooftop thing. He was getting practices in, and he was able to compete in the Coralville Nationals. And, obviously in mid-December, he goes over to Europe. So, I mean, he doesn't have any kind of, hey, I wasn't on the mat enough sort of excuse built in or anything like that. That's not what this really was to Joe. But I could understand it. I haven't talked to Joe. Ellis I've been in touch with, but Joe, even Ellis had to reach out to me. I wouldn't, do that. But it was rough seeing Joe walk away. It may be rougher than seeing Ellis, I would say, because I'm not totally sure like Ellis I could see because Ellis is married with 3 kids. Now Joe is married now and I get it, but I still think he's got more left in him. If he doesn't think so, I don't know, but I haven't talked to him yet, but it crushed me to see that. At the same time, it was like, well, you can't, Jason, you can't deny reality. And so I don't do predictions. I don't do, hey, not to say anything about anybody else, but I don't do the, hey, well, we break down every weight class and pick the winners and pick the finals. And that's fun stuff. But I leave that to the fans. I don't think that's my responsibility to do that and make those decisions for our readers and for fans and things like that. But you don't deny reality. The reality is, of course, Alan Vera was looked at as the guy because first and foremost, the only person he hasn't thumped in his life was John Anderson. That's number one. And he didn't just beat Joe. He beat Joe handily twice. Okay. He beat him up in Schultz and he picked him up and he side lifted him to hell. And then in the Coralville National Finals, he, in my opinion, Alan Vera didn't get enough time on top. So, but that didn't mean going into the Olympic team trials, I thought that Alan Vera was, if he were to meet Joe, that was like some kind of monster for Joe to slay, because I also don't take Dave Schultz semifinals and I didn't take the October national finals, all that. You take these things with a grain of salt. Olympic trials comparative to anything else is very different. And so that would have been the stage for Joe. And I think that we would have had one heck of a series if they were to have met up. But
hey, Johnny took them both. Took down Alan, took down Joe, and a guy again that's really come on the scene. He's a proud Marine.
No.
He's just hats off to Johnny Stefanowicz.
Well, okay, so once you got to do John Stefanowicz, just so I don't actually even have to. First off, yes, or whatever you want to do. I'm not telling you.
He's on the list.
Plan.
He's on the list. I've got 200 deep. He's going to go to the front of that list here.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, then I appreciate the fact that you thought of me, for crying out loud. Then, but Stefanowicz, first off, is the best guy. Okay, like he's not a good man. He's a great man, and sometimes that actually matters when it comes to wrestling, believe it or not. I've come to discover, certainly through 5 Point anyway. And so when I knew that Stefanowicz was committed to this weight class, and there was no way he was going to do 77. Like there was a thought after the 2019 Worlds that he was going to do 77. He was ranked on 5PointMove rankings at 77 because it was like, come on, dude, he's 82, and it's not like he's cutting from 95. So, I mean, what are we doing here? Like he's going 77. But then I guess he reached a point where it's like, screw that. Like, why would I even bother? And so once we figured him locked in for 87, and just like millions of other athletes, I know John very well personally. And I wasn't going to be like, hey, John, what weight are you going? There's certain athletes I would do that to. I text them, call them up. Listen, just to make my life easier, what weight are you going to go at this tournament? Just tell me, please, so I can move on. Stefanowicz, I didn't even want to do that to because I didn't even want to know. I just thought it was cool that he was like wrestling at 87 in a couple of tournaments, so you didn't quite know for sure. But then again, you looked at the size of his back and the tops of his legs. I was like, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't look like a 77 guy. But you look at the way Stefanowicz, look at his style. Like Pat Smith is like one of my favorite people to watch. Pat Smith is a guy that brings like a really constant pace, constant pressure. It doesn't matter if he has a 2-on-1. When he has a 2-on-1, he makes it like the most exciting thing that's ever happened. Like, like you see the way he moves and his hair and just, I don't know, the whole visual. Stefanowicz is kind of like that, where his pressure that's high ups is really, really heavy, but it's never erratic. Like, we have to change the pace now. There's 20 seconds left in the first period. Now we got to gun it, or you're down by 2, or you're down by 1, and with 45 seconds left. Now we got to gun it. It's not kind of how Stefanowicz does it. Like, he's always really going hard. So that allows him to be patient. When Vera gutted Stefanowicz, all he got was 1 turn. That was it. It was 3-0. When he only got that 1 turn, I was sitting there, and I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm Mr. Kid Genius, but when he only gutted Stefanowicz once, I was like, wow, I did not see, I'm not even looking at the screen enough. Anyway,
you're missing all sorts of side comments.
Well,
if you miss the audio, you can go check us out on our video platforms too, but continue on, sir.
No, what I'm saying is that when he only got gutted once, I was like, wow, Stefanowicz is in this. I don't, because he's going to get the passive. No, I mean, you'd figure, but actually that's not even how it happened. But either way, when it was only 3-0, Alan Vera, it's a really nice guy, super terrific athlete. He's known for fading. Just is. He's known for fading in the second period. And that's something he's going to probably have, I would imagine, have to work on. But he's known for it. And Stefanowicz is not. He gets stronger. It's either that or the perception is that he gets stronger because the other guys are always wearing down. But nevertheless, when we get to that second period, I was like, this is anybody's game, even with a 3-point deficit. And all of a sudden, Stefanowicz has 2. And away we went. So when I just wait, if I might, Jason, I just want to say this because I really admire John Stefanowicz personally, and his family and everything else. I gotta say, Saturday morning when I got to the arena, I think that session was high noon. High noon.
Dort mentioned it as high noon, and it would definitely activate the Texan crowd.
So, message got across. I wish I didn't remember that theme in my head. I
don't know if it's the good, bad, and the ugly, or the quick and the dead. I'm not quite sure which one it is. But
yeah,
anyway.
Something like that, where like you open the saloon doors. Oh, somebody should have did a promo like that. Anyway,
next time.
But
I got a feeling we're gonna be back in Fort Worth.
Might have to be. Stefanowicz, I saw Stefanowicz outside the arena when I got there on Saturday, whatever, 11:45 or whatever. And I'm obviously a tier 2, so like whatever you want to make of that, we're not supposed to be near each other, but so I saw him, and so I'm like, how you doing? Just how you doing? Like, not whatever. I was really proud of him, super proud of him. I know how hard that guy works. And he's like, man, this is surreal. I was like, surreal? How? Like, how is this? You're exactly where you should be. You're a 2019 world team member. He's got wins over world medalists. He's been on the national team every year since he's come back from his military hiatus, for crying out loud. So like, no, I don't know. It was such a really, it was something else that he was able to do it. But at the same time, No, I don't think anybody should have died of shock either. Not with his style, not with his discipline, not with how hard he's willing to fight for 6 minutes. Everybody's willing to fight for 6 minutes. They all are. Everybody goes, "Oh, are you willing to fight for 6 minutes?" They all are. They'd be doing something else if they weren't. But how hard?
It's not the 6 minutes. It's what happens in those.
Oh, give it up. Give it up. Anyway,
I got the Vision Quest album on my wall. I'm good to go here.
Please, I got a tattoo, but
you got the whole quote. You got the whole quote like it's
it's
like a letter jacket on your back.
I got Carla's face on my back.
What didn't she drive across the country from Jersey?
That's right. We have a statue for her in Trenton, where she's from.
Yeah, it's crazy for all of us. So I'm looking forward to seeing John wrestle at the games. Now moving to 97, this is one where Braxton Amos comes out, only guy in the tournament to wrestle both styles, hit them both at last chance, hasn't wrestled at Wisconsin yet, kind of took a deferment, is like, I'm going to hang out here for a while. Daniel Miller's the top seed in the challenge tournament, gets knocked off by Nick Boykin. Amos beats Boykin in the finals. Boykin, little Tennessee, West Virginia challenge tournament drama. You don't see that every day at the Olympic trials. And then getting to Giangelo Tracy Hancock, who is also an interesting story in terms of how, coming from Fountain Fort Carson High School and going to train with TC Dancer and Greco exclusively. And what the move that's been making the rounds on the social media, Braxton Amos swings and misses on the headlock. I mean, if he lets it go, it's a slip.
Arm throw.
Hancock catches him by the throat and just like slings him back. I'm like, what the what? I mean,
well, it's a yank back. I mean, that's what we called it. I guess, but
it's not something it's just like you have to. I mean, he timed that perfectly. It was one of the most unorthodoxly beautiful moves, and it got some audible ohs from the crowd. So
violent. Again, that's why
it was. Yes, it was elegant violence. So Hancock comes through, wins that one. EJ Newton jumping into the chat saying, "What's up? What's up, EJ? We're talking Greco here." So I don't think anybody was surprised by Hancock coming through winning this spot as handily as he did.
No, look, 60, Ildar had the bye to the best of 3, but could you have pictured somebody else taking him out? Yeah. 67, could you picture somebody other than Coleman taking out Alex? It's tough, maybe, probably not, but fine. 77, nobody had the bye. We saw, it was definitely not the 1 and the 2 seed. 87, okay, but when we're talking about our Greco-Roman weight categories in the United States of America, Tracy's probably the one who's perceived to have the most distance between himself and the other contenders. And that's even with recognizing that on separate occasions, Daniel Miller has pushed Tracy a little bit. 2018 World Trial Finals. Luke Sheridan actually had a pretty good match with Tracy in match 2 of their Final X. But at least perception speaking, given Tracy, especially, I think probably primarily given Tracy's success internationally, even more so than here, I think that most people who know anyway, saw it as Tracy having the most distance above his challengers, his competitors. And the fact that it was Braxton, I thought was really, really awesome. Number one, because I want him to stay with Greco. So I was like, yeah, this would be great. I hope this encourages him.
I think everybody that's a Greco fan wants him to stay with Greco. Plus, I mean, how many guys in Greco have a song named after him?
What song?
Oh, Wayne Fish is famous Braxton Amos. It's an anthem.
No, I don't even know it. That guy actually sat in our section, but
his agent did. That wasn't actually Wayne. Wayne's not allowed. Right. But Derek Lewandowski, his agent, what was allowed. He also has a song called Jason Bryan is a Jerk.
That I did see that. I did see that. I liked it. I like that song.
Enough about me being a jerk. So back to 97 before we cap off at 1:30 here.
Well,
we're talking about Braxton staying Greco.
Okay, well, first, number one, that what was awesome was Braxton. The only reason why it was awesome that Braxton made the final was because I along with everybody else in Olympic Town, USA, wants Braxton to stay in Greco. Okay, he's first off, he loves it. Second of all, his style, even his body style, forget about his wrestling style, is made for it. Plus, his temperament is made for it. Okay, like he has that edge, he has that intensity where like the kid knows how to put his head into the game. It's important. You know what I mean? Like not every wrestler has that naturally, and he has it as a senior competitor. The senior style is different than age group. It's not just wrestling at senior. Okay, like there's a different approach because you know that what comes at you is harder. It's different. There's more nuance, yet the strength is worse. It's not like you're wrestling people who are kind of in your range. Like it's different. And at 19, he handled that like he's made for it. But at the same time, look, Tracy, I feel Tracy was hurt by the pandemic in some ways because he spends in a normal season, normal year, he spent so much time overseas. He didn't even get to do that. He hadn't had any matches prior. I mean, unless you count the flow thing, the Valencia Burroughs undercard thing where he wrestled Vera. If you want to count that, I guess you probably could. But like Tracy is looked at as an Olympic medal candidate, like a hardcore one, not somebody who's.
How many people have beaten Alexanian on this planet? The list isn't very long.
No, it's not even. Yeah, absolutely. And he's also beaten Milov, and he's beat Cenk Ildem because of a caution. But like, he's got big wins. But it's even that like, if he's in shape and they have a good camp and he's confident. I mean, I don't know. Tracy's. I don't think it's a secret how well regarded he is among his weight category internationally. So I thought you got the best of both worlds at 97 in a way. In that, like, if it wasn't going to be Luke Sheridan or Daniel Miller, well, then what you thought you had was a 19-year-old, high school phenom who happened to win Fargo, 95 times. And also beat Jay Clark the week before, which everybody can laugh out the sides of their mouth. But Jay Clark was a freaking monster at last chance qualifier.
Giving us 40-something, something to cheer about.
Yeah, dude, I was like,
oh, it totally had to look it up too. I had to look it up because he did wrestle in the 2000 trials. Because I wasn't sure if his first one, because he's a year behind us in high school. Right. I was class of 97, he's class of 98, and he was at the U for a year. He was at the U for a year, and then he went full-time Greco, and that was when he joined the Marines, and they were based out of Quantico. So that was the timeline, because I looked it up, and it was like, Jacob Clark, U.S. Marines, Quantico, Virginia, and I'm like, it was 2000. So he has been, he wrestled in
Junior Worlds too that year.
6 trials, not counting the 2006 Jake Clark experience at the World Championships. His blog was just absolutely bonkers that year. So shout out to Jake Clark, Minnesota, right down the road here. Now, last weight as we are working on the marathon here on the Greco recap with Tim Hands from 5-Point-Move. 130. Before we even get to Kuhn and Schultz, I want to break out the uniqueness of this weight class. I do not know Wes Cathcart's background off the top of my head. Sorry about that. But Jacob Mitchell was a 3-time college All-American in 2 different divisions at 3 different schools. So he had the junior college championship at Clackamas, goes to California Baptist, places there, and then the school reclassifies to Division I. So basically, it's a free transfer. It's like, okay, I'm going to CSU Pueblo, places there. Then Donnie Longendike started his career at Nebraska into being a 3-time All-American in Division III at Augsburg, wins it in 2015. And then Tanner Farmer, who spent 4 years on the Cornhusker football team at Nebraska and then gets his 1 year of eligibility at Concordia of Nebraska, NAIA runner-up. And then you get Tommy Helton is wrestled at SIUE, their Division I. It was a weird, unique weight class in terms of the backgrounds of these athletes. And then you've got Kuhn, who's just gigantic, and Colton Schultz, who's, he won a cadet world title. He's junior and U23 credentialed. I mean, this was what we expected to see in the finals, but I just like the diversity of the weight class in terms of the backgrounds of the wrestlers.
Yeah, no, he's Thrasher's not very smart. He's not smart. You know what? I'm married. I'm done trying. I don't care to attract.
You've got hair, dude.
Anymore.
Mine is. I'm starting to dwindle here, so I am not going to make fun of anybody that can still use hair product.
Yeah, but come on.
Except for Dennis Papadopoulos at Hofstra, I will always make fun of him for hair product.
You're not dwindling. I mean, did you ever meet Nate Angle? Yeah, right. You know each other very well.
Greco-Roman Coach of the Year.
Greco-Roman, yeah, a year later, but yeah.
That's the damn coach.
Did you know that at the Dickies Arena, they had, I don't know if you saw it, but they had staff there on Friday holding up signs, for the crowd, like when you walked up, the seats, they had signs that said, masks not required, but please wear masks or whatever. And then I came back for the evening session Friday, and they said, please wear a mask, especially Nate Angle.
Yeah. Where's my cricket sound effect? I could.
Oh, come on, man!
I'm all for a good dad joke, but all right, just obviously with these two guys heading to Final X.
Wait, no, Jason, no,
we're gonna stay on Nate. Let's start making fun of Nate.
Nate could be good looking, like he's sometimes good looking if he knows what he's doing, because he's got that square jawline, like he's handsome if he like that. But what he tries to do is he first off wears goofball ass ties and things like that, because he's a college coach and whatever. And it's like, imagine if he just
listen to the folk style hate over here.
If he just if he had something that just brought your attention to this part of his face, instead it's like, no, we got to look like
not so much here, or
like we're an assassin
here. Yeah,
just this region. No, yeah. I love him to death. I love him.
We're going to talk about a 55 guy as we're talking about 130. So Kuhn and Schultz, I'll be honest with you, probably this outcome didn't surprise probably too many people. They know that Colton's tough. He's going to push him. May steal a match here and there, but first match was one-sided. Then the more traditional Greco style match between these two guys in match 2, but. Kuhn was second in the world a couple years ago. He's got some work to do to qualify the weight. And I guess kind of go with the same Porter question here. What's the minefield looking like for Kuhn as we wrap up here, as we're striking the 10 o'clock hour here in the Central Time Zone, and you're ahead of me. So
yeah, I still got to do a piece with Sancho, so don't even feel bad about it.
Yeah. So I've still got, I got to curate the daily wrestling news at madtalkonline.com/news. Sign up for free. I haven't done any.
Are you going to bring back? Are you going to bring back short time shots for college next year?
I don't know. The jury was still out on that in terms of I looked at how much time it took, and then it was kind of weird how it resonated. I like the interviews, but I don't know. I still have to figure that out. This show has been a complete fluid type of thing. It started out like that, and then we went interviews, and then now we're doing some video, and then when there was everybody and their mother started a podcast, I was like, well, nobody's doing the updates. Let me go back to those again. And then I don't know. I like the concept of them because I like it being like you're almost like your Amazon daily briefing, for example. I watch as my lady in the tube lights up. So maybe I got to poll my audience.
Okay,
I got one bad review and it took it to heart. And I was like, we need the longer ones back. I'm like, well, sad face.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I know that we're going to clip a string on this, but I have a good number of friends who coach college, and it's tough for me to keep up with everything college. For someone who doesn't have the time to consume everything having to do with NCAA wrestling, I thought it was perfect because, you put it on in the morning when it would come out or whatever, and it was just okay, within however long the episode was
10 minutes, 10 minutes was the idea.
Yeah, 12 minutes, 7 minutes, yeah, and it's okay, well, we're caught up, we're good, we can all move on. I don't have to look at Twitter and see oh yeah, so-and-so beat this guy or whatever. So
I liked it because it gave me the opportunity to highlight small programs. Usually I would pick one team to kind of highlight. If I try to mention as many different teams throughout the course of the year, when relevant, it wasn't like I was stuffing the box, so to speak. But if Vanguard they got their first win in school history. I think that made it, and they got the little logo on it. So that's what I like to do with that. But, it also takes time at night. And, I like to spend, I got 2 kids, so that's like the time after the kids go to bed, I get to spend with my wife. So do I sit there and curate my news and do that? Because I have to pick a cutoff. Like, when do I cut off? Do I start it at 9? Do it at 9:30? Because, even a 10-minute show will take 45 minutes to an hour to do. Because you got to write your script, get your scores all set up. And then a lot of that went away because I stopped doing the non-Division I scores because nobody was reading the page views were not there on those standings pages. So, just
so you're talking
results.
about a juice worth a squeeze sort of situation.
Yeah, the ROI. I say this, if we got patrons out there that want it, I'll do it. So that's what it is. I have to basically get my ROI. But anyway, wrapping up, Kuhn, his prospects to get the weight qualified in medal hopes.
Well, heavyweight's always going to, from the United States of America, as you well know,
America.
You never can at the head. Look at it.
Matt Ghaffari, Rulon Gardner, Jameel Byers. Adams won a medal. Robbie's been in medal matches. So,
Robbie got completely hosed out of a medal of epic proportions.
God. That was
no doubt about that.
It was like the greatest loss in Greco history. Like in a weird,
that's
like
a good
that.
way to put it.
It was like the best.
No, I know.
Crap. Anyway, we don't want to. We don't want to go down that road.
Look, if heavyweight's a different animal than obviously any other weight category, but especially 77 by comparison. And Adam really deserves acknowledgement here because Colton, the last even at Final X, Colton was kind of giving Adam the business on the feet a little bit. For sure owning position, for sure getting to his underhook, kind of forcing Adam to not hawk over and change to something that worked instead of what are you going to do? You're going to lock around Colton Schultz with over under? No, not really, not expecting him to do anything anyway. At the same time, Adam deserves credit because he was up for those matches. I thought he looked like he was up for those matches. I'm not saying that Colton wasn't. I'm sure he was. But it just Adam seemed ready. He did, and now how does Adam stack up with who's still out there? If Adam is going to be able to turn people, which his gut has really improved, and I don't know how many people are paying attention to that, but it has. If he's going to be able to turn people, he's a very big threat to qualify in Bulgaria. But that had been a weakness prior internationally for him. He's getting behind guys, he's getting parterre, and he's locking, and there's not really too much happening here. We're just going to stand up in about 7 to 9 seconds because you're not going to be able to get your lock underneath. And especially foreign officials, they don't like to waste time that way. If Adam is a threat from parterre, I'm not worried about him on his feet so much. Even if sometimes he falls into folky habits a little bit, I'm not really even worried about him there so much. It's this, I always say this because it's a good line and it's true, at least when the rule set mirrors it. At the elite level, this is a turn and not get turned sport. That's all there is to it. You could say what you want. Everybody wants to talk about throws and Greco and stuff like that, and I get it. But at the highest reaches of the sport, that's how matches are decided. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about 55 or 130 in that case. And if Adam, he's got what's today? April 6th. So he's got.
Well, it is when we started the show.
Well, he's got what? Well, dude, I interviewed you at first. Don't make it sound like I'm Mr. Talkative.
No, I'm just making. I just know because you're in a time zone. You're an hour earlier, and we are definitely grinding here.
I don't know. It depends. It depends on which Adam shows up. If the Adam who's game and is ready to turn some guys and not depend on something happening on the feet that was, that is not reliable. I don't know. Anything can happen, but I would lean towards, look, there's no doubt perception wise, if we're talking about perception, 130 is going to have a chance from the United States to qualify more so than 77 for sure. Like, that's just the perception, because we have a tradition. We have a world silver medalist going into the tournament. Do we not? Okay.
We do.
There you go. But yeah. All right. I've listened, Mr. Bryant. I've said my piece.
As long as it's not a separate piece, because that's
it's not.
That's
Yo,
ninth grade
dude,
callback.
You didn't read. Did you read? You didn't read the Monday roundup. In the Monday roundup, I talked about Vera versus Stefanowicz, and I said that Vera pieced Stefanowicz up in the first period. That's how I wrote it. He pieced him up. Because I was just so tired. I was like, okay, well, that's how you'd say it, like around here. He pieced them up.
It'll be in the newsletter though, so I'll go back and make sure I read it as we start today. You get it every day at 6:01 Central, 7:01, 7:02 Eastern, basically. The daily wrestling newsletter, which you can find a lot of the FivePointMove.com content on. It's
very appreciated.
Yeah, you get all your dropping Greco knowledge. I think. Although R.C. Johnson was Dr. Greco back in my day, so TC used to call him the Doctor of Greco knowledge. So because I did see a Dr. Greco headline floating around somewhere recently, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Dude, you had, when you were at USA Wrestling, you had like mini 5-point move, because like you spent a lot of time with the Greco team there, I thought.
I mean, the late Lindsay Durlacher used to give me crap about it because I would only hang around with the Northern guys because they were closer to my age. That crew that was coming through, Angle and those guys. It's like, yeah. I remember I was on my interview and I'm walking through the training center. Craig Sesker's giving me a tour of it, and Lindsay Durlacher's there sitting on, oddly enough, the bench that's now named for him. At the Olympic Training Center, and I walk by. Craig's like, "Hey, yeah, do you know Jason?" He goes, "Oh, yeah. You hang out with all the Northern guys." It's like, not hi, how you doing? Typical Durlacher. But I spent a lot of time with those with the Northern guys. That they were, a lot of them were before they made the team. Spencer and Jake Fisher and those guys were training partners in Baku in 07. Right. When Harry was on the team and things of that nature. So I got to know those guys pretty well, and. The Greco guys were great about inviting me over to watch the fights and stuff. So, I mean, I didn't do as much with the Greco as I wanted to. I know there's stories like, Joe Betterman was really into like retro video games. Matt Holt was really into custom artwork on
the shoes. The shoes.
These are things I never got to do when I was in the Springs, and I'm really, really mad. I mean, because I talked to them all. Hey, I'll come out and do. I mean, this is before I even, I was trying to do video features, and I would just budding and learning how to do the video, and the podcast really even hadn't really developed at USA Wrestling then. But I mean, I think I had 30 episodes of that one over 3 years, but it was just there's a lot of stuff with the Greco team.
That's
the personalities that I never did. I did have a feature when I was running Amateur Wrestling News with Joe and Deanna about being married and bringing kids in, and I paired that up with the Burrows. So I got the freestyling Greco. So I actually got all three styles mixed in there because Deanna was.
Do you not think it's weird that Joe Betterman and Nate Engel sound really similar? Their voices sound similar.
I
like as if you're pushing in somebody's nose as hard as you could.
Well, see, coming from somebody who had his nose pushed in a lot on a mat, I'm kind of blocking that type of sound out. So. There's a reason. I mean, as much as I prefer wrestling on a Resolite surface, I hated wrestling on a Resolite surface because it hurt more when you hit it. Oh man, it wasn't as abrasive though. But on that note, my wrestling career is not a topic of discussion here on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I'd like to thank Tim Hands from FivePointMove.com on giving us the lowdown on the personalities, not just the stats, but the people behind the sport, people behind Greco-Roman, and a little bit. And if you're interested to know more about these athletes, you can go through the library of articles he's got on FivePointMove.com. Follow him on Twitter at @5PTMove, and you can basically keep up with everything Greco because he's up watching late. He's doing all this stuff, everything you want on Greco, Tim's your guy. And that's exactly why he was on the show today. So, Tim, appreciate the time and all the knowledge bombs you were dropping.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's relative, but I appreciate you having me, of course. And thank you for all you done for us, too. You should know that how much I love and appreciate you. You know that, though, right?
I mean,
you see how much effort I put into my text messages, Bryant? Do you see that, or my emails? You're like B-Sick. That's your problem. You are like B-Sick, because what I do to B-Sick is I send him stories via text, stories. Oh, Andy, you're not going to believe this. And then I get back, bummer. Or, okay.
Oh, no. Don't. You're not going to sell me out like that as we go. Okay, I'm going to go through and look and see, okay. Me. Hey, interested in coming out short time. You got to break it down, get the correct stuff. Your response, for sure. Okay? You're throwing this stuff right back at me, okay?
It was a hard day yesterday, dude.
Yeah. Hey, okay. Thunderstorm rolling through. I should be okay. All my stuff's okay.
Yeah, I was putting my kids to bed, Brian. Come on.
Yeah, anyway, we can argue about who's got the longer text message, because I got my stuff on my iMessage, so I can get pretty verbose on there too. But, all right, Tim, we'll let you roll. Those of you, again, he's also got a podcast on the Matt Talk Podcast Network at matttalkonline.com. The name is pretty simple. It's the 5-Point-Move Podcast.
New episode this week with Hall.
And if you're here for Dennis Hall getting salty, random interruptions by Max Nowry, that's where you need to go. So, good night, good day, good evening, and remember...
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You know how it goes, right? I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time for short time.